Hello and welcome to Armoury Heraldry Basics. I'm Gunther. Okay, so today we're going to talk about Armoury and basic heraldry in the SCA. So a brief history of heraldry. Heraldry started with combatants on the field painting their shields, say blue or green, or putting a handprint on their shields, so that if they saw somebody with the same type of shield, like a handprint on their shield, they knew that that person was their friend. Over time, it became more complex and it developed into a status symbol. And if you had your own heraldry, then you were somebody important. And because it got complex, they developed courts, special courts that still exist that administer heraldry. So the court in England and the court in Scotland still exist to this day. And of course, heralds were the officers that ran these courts. So what is heraldry? Well, in the real world, heraldry is your coats of arms, your official seals, say on a government document or a church document, official badges, and they were inherited by people from their parents. Children would inherit their parents' one if they were the firstborn, and their parents may have inherited it from their parents and so forth back. It includes marshalled arms, so if two people got married with both of them having heraldry, then they would combine those arms and make a new married arms, and their children will probably get a combination of both of their arms in their heraldry. And as I said before, it's still used today. When the royal weddings happened, the new Duchess got heraldry when she married into the royal family. Okay, in the SCA, we only cover heraldry up until the end of the 16th century. And most of our rules are based on 14th century France. And heraldry in the SCA includes name registration. I'm not going to cover that in any detail today. We do not inherit any heraldry in the SCA, so you can't inherit it from your parents. And we do not allow marshalling of arms. All right, so on to Armoury. We call the colours tinctures, and we don't call them colours, we call them tinctures, because colours is a special thing I'll get to in a moment. So we have three categories: metals, and for metals we have ore and argent, which is yellow and white, or gold and silver. And the second one is colours themselves. So we have sable, which is black, gules, which is red, vert, which is green, purpure, which is purple, and azure, which is blue. And we have furs. This is the last type. So furs are a combination of a colour and a metal. And there are a lot more than what I've shown there. The ones I've included are Vare on the top line going across, counter-Vare, potent, counter-potent, ermine, the first one on the bottom line, ermines, the second one, ermines, and peen. Now, as you can see, they're all a combination of a colour and a metal. Okay, so some rules in the SCA, actually not just the SCA, but some rules about tinctures and how we use them in heraldry. You don't put colour on a colour in heraldry. You don't put metal on a metal. Now, there are some very famous heraldry where it breaks this rule. The Arms of Jerusalem is a silver background or a white background with a gold cross of Jerusalem on it. I believe they got dispensation from the Pope to have that. Excuse me. Okay, and we've come to furs. Now, furs are either a colour, a metal, or neutral. If they are predominantly a colour, they're a colour. If they're predominantly a metal, they're a metal. If they're a combination in equal parts, then they're neutral. So I'll just scroll back up. So ver and countervair are neutral, but the ermine is a metal and ermines is a colour. Okay, so your shield your shield can be divided, or it doesn't have to be. So if it's not divided, it's a plain shield, but you can have field divisions on your shield. I'll go through some of them, not all of them, but so we have per pale, which is up, sort of up and down, split down the middle. Per fez, sort of split the other way. Per bend, going from the top left corner as you're looking at it down to the bottom right. However, in heraldry, that would be considered dexterous, not the top left is dexterous, not left. So it's right, because it's always in the perspective of the person holding the shield. And of course you have per bend sinister, which is the bend going the opposite way. So from the person holding the shield's left. Okay, some more field divisions. We have per chevron, we have per saltier, we have quarterly, we have gyrony. Now, gyrony is one that has multiple variants. The one I've got up here is gyrony of 8. There is gyrony of 6, there is gyrony of 10, there is gyrony of 12. Same with bari. I've got bari of 6, you can have bari of 8, you can have bari of 10. Okay, you got more. We got bendy. Again, this is a bendy of 6, and you got a bendy sinister, another bendy sinister of 6. You could have more. You have paley. Again, it's a paley of 6. Checky. Again, it's a checky of 6. You could have more. And bari bendy, and it's a bari bendy of 6. So that's your field divisions. Now, my examples here are all green and white or silver, or vert and argent if you want to be more technical. But they could be a metal and a metal. They could be a colour and a colour. They could be a fur. Because they are next to each other, they're not on top of each other, you can put the same types next to each other. Okay, so moving on, we have charges. Now, it is possible to have heraldry without charges, and that's called field-only heraldry, but most heraldry has charges. Now, a charge is anything that is placed on a field or another charge. Charges can be simple geometric shapes, animals and beasts or medieval objects. Animals and beasts have their own postures, so they have their own. I'll get into that more in detail later. Okay, so charges. We have what we call ordinaries. They're called ordinaries because they're so common, they're ordinary. We have the chief with the line at the top. We have the base with the line at the bottom. We have the pale, and we have the fez, and we have the bordure. Now, you might be thinking pale and fez sound very similar to per pale and per fez. Well, they're going in the same direction, but these are charges on top of the field. They are not the field themselves. So don't get your ordinary charges and your field divisions confused. Okay, so we have some more. We have a bend again, like per bend, but again it's a charge on top of the field, not the field. We have bend sinister, chevron, saltire, and cross. Now, the cross is just an ordinary cross, hence it's part of the ordinaries. There are other crosses, and I'll get to them in later detail. Okay, and the last lot of ordinaries I'll show you are the canton. Now, if you look at the canton and you think of the Australian flag, you've got up in the corner the Union Jack. That's in canton on the Australian flag. The Australian flag is heraldry. Union Jack is also heraldry. Okay, you have a pall, a pile, and an awl. Now, do not confuse your awl with your bordure. The awl does not go to the outer edges of your field, and a bordure does. So that's your ordinaries. Now, like I said before, some charges, like crosses, have multiple types with their own names. In this case, we're talking about the crosses. The first cross is a Buttony cross. The second cross is a Celtic cross. Not quite sure how you pronounce the third one, Cleshy or something. And the fourth one is a crosslet. That's just 4 of many different types of crosses that you could have in your heraldry. Okay, now I did mention before that your animals and beasts have postures. Now, I'm just going to show you 5, and I'm using 4-legged beast, in this case a wolf. You have postures set for birds, you have postures set for fish and sea creatures. They have different postures to your 4-legged creatures. All right. The postures we've got here for the wolf are rampant. That's probably your most common charge. You've got staton. It's just the wolf standing up. Sergeant, it's the wolf sitting. Passant, it's the wolf kind of walking along, but you have to have 3 feet on the ground and 1 foot up. You can't have the back foot up. And couchant, it's the wolf lying down. And lines of division. Okay, so your ordinaries and your field divisions don't have to have straight lines. The lines can be complex. So here are 5 examples of some complex lines of division: dovetail, embattled, nubly, indented, and invected. All right. So charges categories in the SCA. This is an SCA only thing. So we'll start with the primary charge. Primary charges are the main charge or charges, and they are always on the field. So we've got three examples. The first one happens to be my arms, and the primary charge in this case are the two woof jumbers or legs. Now there's two of them. They form one charge group. The next one has two primary charges. So the sheath of three swords is your first primary charge, and the swan naont is your second primary charge. So that has two primary charges. And the third one is my daughter's arms, and there's three cat's heads erased. Now, you can have multiple, you can have a single for primary charges. They just have to be large and more or less the main charge. Okay, secondary charges. Again, this is just an SCA thing. So secondary charges are minor charges that are always on the field. So like the primary charges, they have to be directly on the field. So I've got two of the same bits of heraldry up again. I've got my arms. Now, my arms have a bordure. It's a bordure counterchanged, but that is a secondary charge. It's also an ordinary, but it's one of the special ordinaries that is always a secondary charge. So your bordure, your tressure, your base, and your chief are examples of ordinaries that are always secondary charges. So again, we've got a tressure on the second bit of heraldry here. And the third one, we have three lemons, and the three lemons are the secondary charge group. Your primary charge is the beast there. I'm not sure what type of beast that is, but that beast is your primary charge, and the lemons at the top are your secondary charge group. Okay, tertiary charges. Tertiary charges are charges that sit entirely on another charge. So my example here is the Lochark Populus badge. So the Lochark Populus badge has 4 stars or mullets of 6 points, and those 4 stars make a tertiary charge group. They are the tertiary charge. Now, if you pictured the actual Lochark Kingdom, the Kingdom arms, as opposed to the Populus badge, it has a crown in the middle of those 4 stars. That would be part of the tertiary charge group. It would also be another part of the tertiary charge. Okay, so that's tertiary charges. Again, just an SCA thing. Maintained charges. So maintained charges are charges that are held or maintained by another charge. So in this case, we have the squirrel sinister holding the nuts or the trifoil. trefoil, holding the trefoil. And so the trefoil is a maintained charge. The squirrel is maintaining it. And our last charge group are overall charges. So an overall charge is a charge that is both on the primary charge and the field. It could also be over a secondary charge. In this case, we've got the new Silent Herald's badge for the society, and so your primary charge would be the cross trumpet, and your overall charge is the hand in front of the cross trumpets. That's your overall charge. Okay, so I'll just move on to some specific rules for SCA Heraldry. So we have the rule of 3. You're allowed to put charges on other charges and have an overall charge, but you cannot have more than 3 layers. All right, slot machine heraldry. You can't have more than 2 primary charges, or it begins to look like a slot machine and doesn't look good. Yes, modern heraldry does it, but we stopped at the 16th century and they didn't do it. So we don't allow more than 2 primary charges. Complexity. We don't like our devices to be too complex. Now, generally, a complexity of 8 or less is acceptable. How you work that out is a more complex thing for another lesson. But we don't like our devices to be too complex. And I talked about marshalling at the beginning of this lesson. We don't allow marshalling in the SCA. Now, I'll give you an example of some marshalling gone mad. This is an actual bit of real-world heraldry. That is somebody's actual arms, and it is marshaled arms. If you look at it, you could see the history of that person's family going back generations on multiple sides. But that is marshaled arms, and that is a crazy example of martial arms, and kind of hopefully makes it clear why we don't do marshaled arms in the SCA, because it does become unwieldy very quickly. Okay, and thank you for watching today's class. I hope you enjoyed it and learnt something.